everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. I feel like it's been such a long week. It's crazy. I hope you guys are doing well. We're going to be doing live readings on the channel this evening. We're going to be doing live astrology readings. I'll let everybody kind of shuffle in for a little bit before we get going. Big shout out and thank you to all of you guys who have been participating in these readings. We're coming to the end of the year, especially those of you guys who have been members. If you're a part of my memberships, level 1, 2, or 3, big thank you guys. This is going to be the last reading that we're going to be doing on a Friday night for the month of November, I believe. If my eyes don't deceive me, now I'm double checking. Yeah, this is the last Friday. So if you guys are a level 3 member and you guys want to get in for your reading for the month, make sure you let me know. We'll get you guys in. I know a few of you guys are already here. We're going to take care of MK. What's up, Tiffany? I got you. Hey, Melissa. Hey, Deanna. I've got you. Davers is in the chat. Third Eye. What's up, Jessica? How was everybody's Turkey Day? Those of you guys who are in the States, hopefully you guys had fun yesterday. It's been like a whirlwind. I'm like, what month is it? I'm looking at my calendar and I'm looking at December because I was doing the horoscopes. That's why I'm like, I don't know what today is. It's been such a crazy week, a crazy month in general. I've been like traveling all over the place. I feel like I'm still kind of getting settled, but we're doing live readings on the channel. Tonight's going to be astrology. You can scan the QR code right over here. If you do that, it is going to over here, over there, one of these boxes. It'll take you to my PayPal where you can make a donation for a reading. For me to look at your astrology, I need to get some information from you. So if you do scan the QR code, it'll take you to my PayPal. You can make a donation. The donations are going to be for the readings. They're all donation based. So we're doing $55 for any one question, $70 for Synastry. I'm a Western astrologer, so I need to know your date of birth, including the year, the city, state, and also country of the location in which you were born. So put that in the memo for me, all that information, so I can cast your chart and let me know what specific question or topic you have questions about. Sometimes it's timing, other times it is questions about a natal chart or a particular topic going on in your life. We accept PayPal, we accept Super Chat, so you guys can do Super Chat also through YouTube. Yeah, it's been a little chaotic for sure. Jessica says, I will wait for December. I look forward to it. I'm getting so much stuff ready. I already put the December horoscopes out for you guys. And I'm getting ready for my New Year's Day live show. So if you guys don't already know, number one, I am having a huge sale for Black Friday, Cyber Monday on my website. All my courses are on sale. We're having deals for packages for readings, all of my New Year's 2024 calendars that I'm putting out. So if you guys like the lunar calendar behind me, I created that. Also, I have a new 12-month calendar for 2024 with all of the astrology transits, including focus on like ritual stuff for each month for the 12 signs. So check it out. But readings are by donation this evening, $55 US. And let me know what your question is, please. Appreciate it. What's up, Toddman? All right, so let's go ahead. You see it? Uh-oh. It's going in and out. Let me know if you still see it or not. Okay, all right. Can you guys tell that the retrograde is coming? Because I sure can. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. Every time my screen disconnects, the sizing changes. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to leave that alone. All right, so we'll get into the readings in just a second. I'll give you guys a rundown of who I have in the PayPal already. Is Duff here? Is Jennifer Duff? I saw you last week and you popped back in again today, so I'm not sure if you're here or not for your reading. But I have Jennifer, MK, We've got Tiffany that popped in there as well. Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it. This one was definitely really fun creating. It was very different this year than last year. All right, so we will be starting with MK, and then we'll take Diana. We'll see if Duff is here or not, because it's a different price that you sent me, so I'm not sure if you're watching. And then we've got Tiffany. If you guys want to get a reading this evening, scan the QR code and hop in the queue. We'll leave it open for a little bit. But also, yeah, let me know how your guys' weekend has been with this astrology. It is kind of hairy already with some of the squares. Love to hear how you guys are feeling. And let me plug in Diana. Let me see, unless I have you. April 7th, I have you. All right, so we'll take MK. So MK's not here, but they're going to circle back. And let's pull their question up here in just a second. There we go. So we've got MK that asked a question and said, hello, I'd like to cash in on my monthly reading. I won't be able to make it to the live, but I'll catch the recording. My question is, how can I prepare for Pluto and Aquarius square my Scorpio sun? Good question. You asked the right person, because I've had similar questions, although Pluto's going to square your sun before it squares mine. So let's take a look here. MK is October 27th, 97 at 1:32 p.m. in Woodbury, New Jersey. So we've got an Aquarius rising, and we've got a sun in Scorpio and a moon in Virgo. What's up, Elizabeth? Nice to see you. All right, so essentially what they're asking, and let's move this ahead a little bit so there's more clarity here, because the square, it's going to start over the next, it's already kind of been building. You've been feeling it since Pluto went into Aquarius this last year. Until Pluto comes to about, obviously 4 degrees, that's when you're in the midst of the exact square. But I work with it about 2-3 degree orb. So in 2024, we're going to see Pluto re-ingress into Aquarius, and then it's going to make its way up to about 2 degrees, and then it'll retrograde. So Pluto transits, you're feeling the effects anywhere from about 1 to 3 years when you're within that particular orb. So for those of you guys who are questioning what I'm talking about, we've got Pluto over here in the new year, like I said, moving back into Aquarius, and Pluto is moving to a 90-degree angle, coming into an opening square with their sun. So let's talk a little bit about what Pluto is. Obviously, the planet of regeneration. It's moving through power struggles. It moves through crisis, opportunities for breakthroughs and healing. And it's not just that you have Pluto coming into a square with your sun, which not everybody, kind of gets in their lifetime, but it's that Pluto is also coming into contact with your natal Uranus. Okay, so that's going to have a different flavor. So you've got this fusion of major changes in regards to, rebelliousness, self-expression, maybe freedom, socializing, friends. And it's going to be in your 12th house, so it's going to be a little bit more hidden or maybe subconscious in how you work through that. And it's an opening square, which means it represents like the first challenges to kind of act. This tells me that the sun is still in superior position. So, fixed squares, right? Whether it's a T-square or just a simple square, fixed signs don't want to change. So we've got that Scorpio sun that's all about focusing on the shadow. I notice your sun is conjunct Chiron, so it might be about working through themes involving healing yourself, healing relationships, because the sun rules your 7th house of partnerships. And also like whether or not you identify as like a victim maybe in certain relationships, and whether this is with romantic partners or maybe issues with superiors in the workplace, or issues with relationships to like older male family members, because you have the sun at the top part of the chart. So essentially, like Pluto coming into Aquarius, it also has this connection to your ascendant. So there is this breakthrough that's going to happen over the next 10 years or so, where there is a profound change and transformation to how you carry yourself out in the world. I see the ascendant as more or less like your front door, right? So this is, you know, if you were to go on a first date or if you were to go on a job interview, this is the mask that you wear. So Aquarius rising really prides themselves on being different and unique, or future kind of thinking, maybe a little bit more abstract or unusual in terms of how they present themselves, how they dress, how they look. So Pluto deals traditionally with your whole sign 10th. So it's going to be about your status in the world. And I think with Pluto coming into contact with Uranus, it is making you work through something involving your subconscious and what needs to be shifting or changing there before you go through some of the physical changes in a couple of years when Pluto crosses your ascendant. We call these angular houses: the first house, the fourth house, the seventh house, and the 10th house. And when certain planets come into squares with these angles in transit, the wheel of the chart turns, because it creates a lot of pressure. So you'll see that wherever, the slowest moving planet probably has it takes the most, I guess, amount of time for that to really kind of transpire for you to see the changes. But the faster moving planets are going to bring also, change as well. So I'm not just looking at Pluto coming into a square with your sun. I'm also looking at the fact that Jupiter is already in an opposition to your sun and it's squaring Pluto. So Pluto is the focal point of a T-square that you're only going to have until about the beginning of the year. For me, that's basically saying it's really putting the pressure on you to tap into your subconscious, pay attention to your dreams, listen to your higher self, be more open to making changes behind the scenes, especially when it comes to what your faith is, or maybe what you're learning or where you're traveling. And in this, next few months, the Jupiter opposition for a lot of Scorpios can be about growth within relationships. And I think that Pluto going through the fourth house out of four, through the 12th house out of 4, and it's squaring your sun out of 4, is also going to be about dealing with roots or your past, or maybe your ancestral karma or emotional patterning. There might be a change that goes on the home front, because 4s relate to your home space. It can also be about your mother, or a female figure. But Pluto coming into a square with the sun, one thing that I have definitely observed in transit for clients, and I've also seen it in natal charts if people have the sun square Pluto natally, is that there is this feeling that two things cannot coexist. That as Pluto is coming into the square, or if it's in the superior position like this, it's basically saying that you have to go through personal change and transformation, which is going to have an impact on your ego, right? Your creativity, your self-expression, your vitality. I do feel like a lot of this is going to be about wanting to define yourself outside of either what you do for a living or your relationship status, and wanting something new to emerge. I've heard some clients that go through Sun Square Pluto, and if there's other transits that are happening, they don't always feel the traditional do or die kind of impact of Pluto, because it's a slow moving square. So it's going to be working on you and creating that pressure for about, a year and a half or so. My advice is to also, go and learn about Pluto coming into conjunction with your natal Uranus. I would encourage you to learn more about your sun square Uranus. I feel like some of the challenges maybe that you have had in terms of, how you express yourself out in the world, or your career, or your relationship with superiors, or even a parent, is somehow factored into that sun square Uranus. And I've never met anybody that has that aspect in their chart that isn't a bit of a rebel. There is a sense of feeling like you don't want to be told what to do, because this is also a hard angle. So maybe Pluto coming into conjunction with Uranus is showing you that there is a need to change or transform or transmute some of these tendencies and not feel like you're acting out or you're resisting change or that you're being rebellious for the sake of doing that. Maybe you start to kind of realize that it's really a reflection of maybe some issues that you've had with superiors in your kind of early upbringing. So you learn not to kind of feel like you have to stick it to the man. I think a lot of astrologers would tell you, you know, with Pluto on or coming into conjunction with your ascendant, that you need to be mindful that your body can change, that there can be a major transformation in regards to your appearance. And also, you know, Pluto is about kind of going to hell and back. I think that it's not quite on your ascendant yet. So it's about the changes that are going on behind the scenes before something new emerges over the next couple of years. Just after this transit, then you're going to see Pluto hit your ascendant, and then it's going to hit your Jupiter, which I feel like is going to be about really kind of emerging, almost like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. You know, Pluto Jupiter can be a wealth of knowledge. It can be a wealth of self-expression or creative energy or opportunities also for recognition. I mean, some may even say fame or more resources. And I think it's going to come from this cocoon period that you're going to go through over the next couple of years as Pluto squares your sun. Be open to making changes also in your living situation. I wonder, you know, sometimes I see transits like this where people decide, well, I'll relocate and go back to school, or I'll spend time in another city, or maybe even in another country. That could be happening as well with that particular square. But, you know, it's going to very much focus on this natal Sun square Uranus, which is basically almost exact. It's within a few minutes. So you might want to reflect on some of these squares between these two planets and think about how Pluto coming now into contact with Uranus square the sun is going to dramatically change either something about your career or your relationship with authority figures or parents. And lots of change of emotions, change of home, you know, change in regards to, I think ancestral patterning can definitely kind of come up here as well. And you're not technically going to come into this square for quite some time. You'll feel it next year. You'll for sure feel it because Pluto's going to hit 2 degrees. But it's not going to come in for the square until it hits 4 degrees, which is not going to take place until around about spring of 2026. So just know that that's when you're coming in for it. And what's interesting is you're going to see a transit where, you know, that's going to happen. You're going to start to feel the square, obviously, of Pluto. And then you're going to experience the nodes change signs. And then the nodes are going to come into Aquarius and Leo. And so what I can see here is that you're going to have the North Node in Pluto coming into contact, squaring your sun. So the grand finale is actually going to be in 2027. And man, I look so far ahead. Many of you guys who watch my reports, you know, I talk about stuff like years before it happens, but this particular square is something I've been watching for a long time, because in 2027, this is where collectively we're all going to go through a big change, a transformation in some area of our life. So we're gonna have to look at where Aquarius is. But that will be the finale where North Node conjuncts Pluto and it squares your sun. And so what I would recommend is, yeah, obviously the next like 2 years, you know, just taking notes with what's going on with the Pluto square that you're starting to feel, with the understanding that once you hit the second half of 2027, you are really moving into that significant change. You're moving into that shift, right? So hopefully that's helpful. Definitely an interesting transit. You'll have to circle back. Feel free to leave me a comment, give me some feedback on this stuff. And yeah, we're in the same boat. You're going to go through it first. My Mars is at 4 degrees of Scorpio. So I'm going to have Pluto square my Mars before it squares my sun and my other stuff. So we're in it together, sister. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Thank you, Third Eye. I'll add you to my list. If you guys are just popping in, you want to get a reading, you can scan the QR code and get in the queue. All right, so let's see who we got here next. Okay, so we've got Diana. who just popped in here. Did you have a particular question, Diana? Maybe you can help me navigate through my Saturn transits. Let's take a look. Oh, hi. How are you feeling right now with the Sun and Mars on your ascendant? Conjunct Pluto. Did you pop off yet? Have you had any of that stuff happen quite yet? The Mars stuff or the Saturn stuff? Right now, Saturn's squaring my ascendant again. The past few months, I haven't been easy, so I'm worried about what happens when Saturn enters my 4th house. I feel like I really need a change. I feel the urge to quit my job and never work for someone again, but I don't know where to start. I feel like I'm not where I want to be in terms of relationships, jobs, and income. Well, some food for thought, okay? So, you know, when I look at your chart, I mean, yes, you're having Sun conjunct Mars on your ascendant right now. So passion, agitation, frustration, eagerness, wanting to move forward, wanting to be free, right? All of this like Sagittarius stuff is going to come up. What I like / don't like about right now is that everything that's coming into Sagittarius is squaring Saturn. So it's kind of like kicking Saturn in the ass, being like, okay, get the show on the road. Don't be so sluggish. So those of us who have been resistant to making moves, the Sun-Mars conjunction right now is basically telling Saturn to get the show on the road. 2, we also see that we're going to have these planets then come into a square with Neptune. Very different energy. When Sun and Mars come into square with Saturn, they're pushing Saturn, you know, beyond its limits. When you have the squares come into squares with Neptune, we're going to feel like we have energy drain and we're confused and we don't know which end is up. Okay, so just food for thought. Making an action plan now and using frustration as the fuel to motivate you to figure out where you want to go is how you want to navigate that. You know, when I think of Saturn square the ascendant and the descendant, I also think about your body, and I think about, you know, how your body is feeling regardless of age. You can have health issues when Saturn squares the ascendant. Saturn is also squaring your Pluto, which tells me that this is just jam-packed with lots of potential feelings of pressure or feelings like you need to have a meltdown, and that something just absolutely dramatically must change. So it's also, you know, Saturn in a square to your Pluto. And I think that the powerful thing about your astrology is that you do have Pluto on the ascendant. It's retrograde, so, you know, it does mean that a lot of the intensity and the things that you're working on changing is very much behind the scenes. It's not so apparent as maybe Pluto in the 1st house. And it tells me that there needs to be some sense of change because these are mutable squares, but change revolving around the way that you navigate life. And Sagittarius energy, it does not mesh well with Saturn because you're a Jupiter energy, you want to expand, and you have Jupiter in your 1st house. So here's the deal. Part of me feels inclined to tell you you were born for this because you have Jupiter in the 1st house, which is all about growth and expansion, and you have Saturn in the 4th house, which is saying, hold up, before you go on a trip, before you run off, before you quit, before you join the circus, you need to really have some sense of foresight, basically, into where you're going to live, how you're going to feel, how you're going to take care of your, you know, domestic needs. And, you know, I look at the Saturn-Venus conjunction where maybe, you know, what's happening is you're coming into your Saturn return and Saturn's getting ready to cross the most southern part of your chart, which is called the IC. So you've heard the phrase like, you know, when you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere to go up but from here. That's like Saturn on the most southern part of the chart. So it's pretty common when Saturn is conjunct the 4th house cusp that there is this feeling of being like, I'm stuck. Some people get stuck at home. Some people are stuck taking care of family members. Other people can have some depression or some mood stuff, especially in Pisces. And there is this sense of reflecting with where you want to go, right? Because the MC seems like so far away. So naturally, there's this feeling of this is where I'm at. This is heavy. How do I move forward? How do I get to where I want to go? And what Saturn coming into conjunction with Venus is going to do is it's going to get you thinking about what are your goals? how do you want to live, right? What kind of a city do you want to be in? What are your expenses for your home life? What does your family need? And you'll take all of that into consideration before you make moves and you fly the nest, right? Or make a change, maybe quit your job. My advice is, because you're having eclipses in Aries in your 5th house, which is about self-expression, creativity, self-sufficiency. It can be about getting ready to be self-employed. You have that working in your favor. So you kind of have the chart of somebody that I would say, well, you need to have a really strong transit to your Mercury before you can like really quit your day job. You've got eclipses coming up there next year. You just recently had a solar eclipse, this spring in your 5th house. So everything's coming together, but I feel like next year is really the defining moment where you really focus on doing the work that you want to do. And it might mean that you're having to do it on the side with a continuing job, and probably right around the time that you're having either retrogrades or eclipses. At the end of 2024, or maybe going to the beginning of 2025, you might make a segue. I love Saturn conjunct Venus. I like it a lot because I feel like, especially in the 4th house, it's saying that you're being held back for some reason because there's something that you still need to work through. Whether it's your family, like lineage stuff, or maybe it's like a relationship that's going to come in. There's something that is going to, I think, give you a little bit more grounding in this next year. And a lot of stuff changes when you have your Saturn return, because it really is like a coming of age transit. So when we look at Saturn, which represents money, resources, and values, Venus, which is your goals and also your career or your workspace, I really feel like next year, this is really the time for you to like figure out what you love, I have Saturn conjunct Venus in my 4th house. It's in a different sign, but I remember when I had my Saturn return, I had similar feelings, and I remember just focusing on what was going to make me feel the most creative. I didn't want to do anything that I didn't absolutely love, and that also went for things that I was buying or like relationships and other things. And so you have to make a lot of sacrifices with Pisces. And I think with Venus conjunct Saturn, you'll look at things and go, well, I have to pay my bills. I have to take care of myself. I have cost of living. Can't totally move away from, having a job, but I can start creating time or space or dedicating something to something that I would be doing on my own. And you'll reap the benefits of the eclipses in your 5th house. I also feel like maybe this isn't what you're looking for, but you're going to be also, I think, experiencing a relationship next year that is going to dramatically impact the future of either where you're living, it's going to send you for a bit of like a tailspin. Jupiter will go into your 7th house, and it's going to oppose your natal Jupiter and score your Saturn, which means a relationship's going to come in, which is going to get you thinking about, do I want to be in this relationship? Do I not? There might be some aspect of like distance or somebody who's in another place, or the relationship positively impacting your living situation. So I kind of feel inclined to tell you, just like hang tight for a little bit. Focus more on dedicating time if you know that you don't want to be working for other people. I'm trying to think of the name of the book. Is it the 3-hour work week, the 4-hour work week? I don't know the number of hours, but that's a great book. Automatic Habits is something else that I've been recommending to a lot of people, especially people who have a lot of Sagittarius in their chart or a lot of mutables. Because I think right now it's going to be about kind of building something out that you love before you're able to really kind of make this there it is. Okay, the 4-hour work week. That's a really good book too. Obviously, it takes time to get to that point, but I think that can be really helpful in trying to kind of come up with like a strategy for having, extra income and having, other ways of being able to bring money in and stuff that can kind of be like automated, But yeah, Saturn return's it's gonna be a doozy because it's gonna be opening square to your Jupiter. So a lot of it's gonna be about you going, okay, it's time for me to get grounded, and you're gonna be really feeling it February, March, April. And it looks like Saturn will retrograde over your Saturn and it'll go direct on your Venus. So this time next year, very different dynamic because with some kind of growth with either a relationship, or it could be like you have Seventh house can be like your marketplace, right? If you have clients, if you have a service, if you have something that you're selling, that can also be really expanding within your seventh house, allowing you to feel like you can have, more options in terms of like where you're living and your work life. So there's some good stuff that's going to come. Just know that Saturn is really here to kind of help you slow down and think about where you want to be in the long term, right? When I think of Venus conjunct Saturn, these are usually people, especially trying your moon, who are like, oh, I'd like to own a house, or I'd like to invest in real estate, or, some kind of family business, which you may ultimately end up starting, which, can be really positive for you and also for relatives down the road. Venus at a 12 and Saturn at an 18. So the other thing is there might be stuff revolving around like doing some kind of design or art. Do you do anything like that from home? 18 degrees could be clients. So I don't know what kind of work you do, but I definitely feel like you have lots of opportunities to start doing what you've ultimately been doing for other people and doing it for yourself, right? Anyway, hope that's helpful. Definitely pay attention to your Saturn return stuff. I did a Saturn and Pisces video for those of you guys who are having a Saturn return, so I would go and check that out. Hope that's helpful for you, giving you some food for thought. We're going to leave the queue open for a little bit. What's up, Sasha? Thank you, guys. It was the 4-hour work week. Who else do I have here? Cool. I got a couple of you guys. Tiffany, Lightworker, Danielle, Season Cole, Susanna, Sasha. Learned third visualization. Well, that's cool. What's that? I've never heard of that. I would love to know. All right, who else do I got here? Is Duff here? Duffy? Hey, Laurel. We've got Tiffany and Third Eye. There's Tiffany. Tiffany says, anything coming for love? Guy, I'm interested. Now I'm not sure if things will pick up between us. You say that as you're getting ready to have some Uranus transits in your 7th house. LOLs. Okay, so a couple things. One is, relationships for you has connections to Venus because you are Scorpio rising, Sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Taurus. So you're getting ready to have your lunar return. So relationships for me, you're getting ready to see Venus coming into conjunction with the South Node. I would say this to any Scorpio rising right now, but, Venus, this is the first time in 18 years that we're going to have Venus conjunct the South Node in Libra. Now, it's only going to be for about a day or two, but still, that's pretty potent because Venus is in its home ruling sign. What does Venus rule? Relationships, clients, support, diplomacy, beauty, art. And Venus is about to come into conjunction with the South Node right here at 24 degrees around November 29th. Make a note of like a day plus or minus of this date because Venus conjunct the South Node for a Scorpio rising can represent something coming to you in a dream. It can represent a vision. It can represent your intuition. But it can also represent something from the past or something karmic that might pop up. Now, when this conjunction happens, it's going to be in conjuncting your descendant. So it kind of tells me right now, there is this sense of either feeling like you're doing a lot of relationship cleaning up, like from your past relationships, or there is this sense of being like there's somebody who's around, but I can't really read them. 24 degrees is like somebody who's either acting like a lunatic or somebody who is kind of hiding away or they need their space. It's like a Pisces energy, so they'll kind of come and go. So all the Scorpio risings, pay attention because this is going to be a pretty significant energy, because if something's going to fade away or if somebody's going to check out or get kind of ghosty, it's going to be right around this transit. Now, the other reason why I say this is because just shortly after that transit at the end of the month, then Venus is going to come into a square with Pluto, and well, that rules your chart. So then at the beginning of December, Venus will hit 29 degrees, which is the final degree of Libra, and it's going to square Pluto. So it's almost like I could see the next like 2 weeks or so as you being like, I'm feeling it out with this person. I'm going to see if they're going to show up. Am I going to feel chosen? Are they going to put me first? You know, are they going to show me that they're interested? And then whether or not they do or they do not, it can have a pretty significant impact on your self-esteem because Pluto's in the second house. It can have a huge impact on your thought process and communication. You can be feeling like a lot of, how do I put this? There could be a lot of like pressure, like mentally, kind of like stressing out whether or not somebody's going to respond to you. And then relationships are destined to change anyway. Whether you look at this from Placidus or you look at this from whole sign, you know, being a Scorpio rising, Jupiter in your whole sign 7th house is good for relationships. You're going to see Jupiter go direct in December. So relationships can continue to grow or new people can come in. And then also you're getting ready to have Jupiter and Uranus come into your 7th house of relationships. So when Uranus hits the 7th house angle, which it's going to in the spring next year, it'll be with Jupiter. So there could be some sudden leaps forward in a relationship where something is like opening up very quickly. To me, it seems like when you get to like May, June, July of next year, some of the oppositions to your first house is opening the door to new relationship opportunities. But I do believe one of the challenges is going to be either letting the past be in the past and letting it go, or it's going to be trying to figure out like how to navigate a relationship in a living situation, because you're going to have planets in opposition to Saturn, so somebody could be further away. Squares to transit Saturn and Neptune, which means some kind of change in terms of your living situation. So your chart almost reads like a Sag rising. You're a Scorpio rising, but it almost reads like a Sag rising. And next year, my goodness, this grand mutable cross that you're going to have is going to be like relationship stuff is impacting my, you know, my status in the world. And I might quickly jump into a relationship and have a status change. It makes you feel like you don't have to be alone because it's opposing your Saturn. And I think really the biggest challenge is going to be either distance or like a living situation, to be honest with you. Relationships now, though, I would keep my eyes peeled for the next 2 or 3 weeks, because it does seem like if somebody is going to fade away, it would be then. And even then, you know, this Mercury retrograde that we're going to have in December, you know, Mercury retrograde is the least of our problems, guys. The other planetary retrogrades, I think, are a lot worse. But we're going to see Mercury form several trines to Jupiter. So as a Scorpio rising, you know, communication over the next month or two can get so much better for relationships. There can be much more clarity as long as you're willing to kind of speak up and you know, try to get more insight. And you might actually get a lot of reinforcement and you know, like, you know, somebody telling you, no, I am interested, you know, I'm just busy. This is what I've got going on. And they can kind of reaffirm, you know, that there is a connection here. I will say, though, that the way that I read your chart right now with the outer planets, like I look at, you know, Saturn and Neptune, and I'm also kind of looking at Mars coming into conjunction with your Sag stuff. This is a time where your first house is getting very strongly activated. And it seems to me like there is a huge focus on, you know, what do I want? What do I need? Where am I going? And like squares to Saturn can have you feeling stuck. But also it's supposed to be having you think about what your goals are outside of a relationship, and how to be able to better direct your own energy. Yes, the oppositions and the squares, you know, to Pisces can make you kind of feeling like you're alone. And generally a very strong outer transit to your 7th house Lord can bring relationships in. So for example, you know, right now Neptune's in an opposition to your Venus, which means you're like, I don't know where I'm going to be living next, or I don't know where my relationships are going, or maybe you feel like people are dealing with home or private life things which can inhibit commitment. That's fading, so it's kind of been hanging around there for like the last year or two. And you are going to see when Jupiter and Uranus go into your 7th house where people can suddenly show up and there can be lots of growth in relationships. You're also going to see these 2 planets trine your Venus. So my money in terms of like dating is between now and the end of the year. If something or someone falls off, you can try to talk about it and see if there's any clarity. But I feel like you're going to see a lot more moving forward right after that Mercury retrograde. And then, you'll see kind of spring of next year, there's probably going to be a lot more that's happening with relationships. So hopefully that's helpful for you. How are you doing with Neptune in opposition to your Venus? Do you feel like it's been hard to get any clarity from anybody you've been dealing with romantic, the last year or so? I feel like Uranus in Scorpio, in Taurus as well, even though it's not in your 7th house. Scorpio risings are having like the wildest time in relationships because partners are either just like crazy or there's people that are coming and going, right? There's not a lot of like consistency there. Let me know. Let's see. Who else do I have here? Okay, so we got Tiffany. We're going to do third eye. Okay, cool. Awesome. Let me give you guys the list of who I've got. So we've got Nancy. We've got Danielle. Susanna, Sasha, and Kaye. And then also we've got third eye up here. Take that next. Okay, so I'm just looking at, because there's one person that does not want their name used. Okay, I got it. I'll make sure I don't use your name, don't worry. Okay, so what's up, Nancy? How's it going? Susanna? Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I've got all of you guys. You're all on deck, so just hang tight. Let's see. Is Duff here? I gotta keep asking. Duff? I feel like we're playing tag. You send $10 and I'm like, I'll see you next week. All right, let me actually plug these charts in because I didn't have any of you guys till just now, so I'm gonna do it all right now. That'll make it a lot easier for me. Anybody have some fun / scary / horrific holiday stories? I would imagine it was like a really colorful Thanksgiving for some people. Especially, I'm saying that because Mars has been square Saturn. Anybody have some funny stories? Thank you guys for your patience. Usually I have these done early. July 22nd, 1981. Everybody. Let me catch up. I'm okay. What's up, Jill? Susanna said it was chill. Fell down the stairs and broke her foot. Ugh, that's Mars square Saturn. Yikes. I got mad at my dad and almost quit my job again, but that's usual. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, the last couple days is woof. All right. So we're going to take third eye. All right, third eye. I have Sam. Third eye Am. Let's correct that because I'm pretty sure your name is not Sam. Okay, there we go. Chrissy. So I've got you here June 6th, 1978, 10:02 a.m. Fort Myers, Florida. So you're Leo rising, sun and moon in Gem. Okay, so my name is Chrissy. I've been sick with lung inflammation since October 13th, 2023. My question is, will I fully recover? And do you see me moving due to this illness? Well, I'm sorry to hear you're sick. That's a bummer. All right, so let's take a look here. Let's see what you got going on. So health in general is connected more to your 6th house, which is going to be ruled by Saturn. Pluto is now direct, but the lungs in particular is connected to your 3rd house, okay? And lungs is generally Mercury, or I would say Gemini, breathing. So here's what's going on. Couple things. One is you are experiencing Venus going through the 3rd house, coming into conjunction with the South Node. South Node is usually what we cut. So one bit of advice that I would give you is actually like trying to do some breathing or breath work can be helpful to cut any unnecessary stress, or sometimes it's unnecessary, talking that can come up with Venus there as well. Two is, I think the reason why you're having health issues is because Saturn is currently in a square to your Mercury. So Saturn is in the 8th house right now of joint resources, insurance, releasing things, letting things go, clearing things out. So one of the best things you can do, P.S., I'm not a doctor, I'm just giving astrological advice, is when Saturn is in the 8th house, we want to detox, right? We want to clear stuff out. The 6th house can be our diet or our habit. So I'm looking at this going like, are you overworking? Are you not getting enough time to get up and stretch and move around? I feel like Saturn being connected to Capricorn in the 8th is like maybe doing some water fasting. I know that sounds weird, but that can actually clear your gut out and can kind of help kick a virus if you've got something viral going on. But Saturn has been in a square to your Mercury all year, so you're more likely to have, some kind of health, breathing, communication problem. Now, I notice that your sun is at a 15 degree, which is also going to be about communicating or breathing. So next year, when Saturn comes out of the square with your Mercury, which is going to be about health in your mind, then it's going to square your sun, which is going to be the ruler of your first house. So you happen to be one of those people who's going to kind of get hit with a double whammy. When do I see you probably getting better? When we get all of this mess of Sagittarius out of an opposition and a square with Mercury. And generally we see reversals when we see a retrograde. So you're going to see Mercury go retrograde in your 6th house, which means your health could be turning around in December. We'd need to see some positive stuff with that, but essentially, Mercury is going to trine Jupiter several times. I will tell you, I have seen some people who are sick and they're like, you know what, I got to go back to the doctor during a retrograde. You make a phone call or you send an email that you're like, I need to talk to my general practitioner, figure out if I need to take something different or if I need to be doing something different. It might also mean that you're staying away from 6th house work routine. Maybe you're working remotely. Maybe you're working from home. Maybe you're like, I'm not going to the gym. And I know that until Saturn comes out of a square with Mercury, you're still coming out of this. So I think it gets better in the new year. I think you're going to be feeling probably better by about the second half of December. But right after that, Saturn Mercury square ends, then Saturn's coming into a square with your sun. So Saturn in Pisces does have an impact on immune systems, guys. That's what it does, okay? It creates lots of problems. And what is Pisces? Pisces is the feet. So foot reflexology, detoxes and foot patches, soaking the feet, soaking in baths, doing like hot, water gargles with salt. These are all things that we can do with Saturn in Pisces. But all next year, I feel like you may have some lingering stuff if you don't like nip this in the bud now and really make some of the changes that you need to make, maybe to start clearing some of this stuff out. Now, the sun rules your physical body, right? So as Saturn is going through the 8th house and it's squaring the sun, I could see a situation where it's like, well, if you're really sick all the time and you're not getting the nutrients that you need, you're not eating as much, sometimes Saturn square the sun can thin you out. So you can actually like lose weight. Have you tried like a nebulizer? I feel like a lot of people have had a lot of success with nebulizers with Saturn in Pisces. And I've also noticed like homeopathic stuff. I mean, just my preference, you can if you click the description box below, there's a link that says Amazon book list. Click that. It's going to take you to my Amazon list that I recommend. Earlier this year, I made a whole list of supplements specifically for Saturn in Pisces because I knew people were going to have a lot of immune issues. There's an immune boost in there that's like really awesome. That's great. Like as soon as I start getting sick, and it's all natural, as soon as I start getting sick, I start popping a few of them. and I'm fine. It's like crazy. But I've also seen a lot of people talk about nebulizers with like sea salt or using colloidal silver, especially for like lingering coughs and things that aren't going away. Oh, so you're using the hydrogen peroxide. Awesome. That's very Pisces, like liquids, right? Things that can be like turned into fog or whatever, like steam. But yeah, it's like I think you'll see a reversal, okay? I do in December. But I also look at this and I'm like, I would recommend clearing stuff out of your system and trying to kind of like detox stuff out. That might be more so helpful. But I'm getting the feeling end of December, you're going to start to see that change. And then Mercury's going to come in and it's going to trine Jupiter. So I'm anticipating like when the sun is coming into conjunction with Pluto, you get to the second half of January, you're feeling a lot better, right? What's up, Alex? Hey, Danielle. I will check that. I was watching Karna. I use it for that. I think, did I send you a refund? Let me see. Because usually if we miss you, I will send you a refund, but let me see. Oh yeah, I've got you. Danielle. Is this a different Danielle? Let's see. What's your last name, Danielle? Sorry, guys. Trying to multitask. Let me know your PayPal name. I need to know your full PayPal name so I can see which Danielle it is because I see a couple. Okay, so for third eye. Hopefully that's helpful. Circle back, let me know, but I'm kind of thinking end of December. That's looking when it's going to get a little bit better. And Saturn in opposition to Mars. Really pay attention to your health now. I mean, obviously now, because you've got like Sun and Mars coming into an opposition with Mercury square Saturn. You might be a little bit more prone to like excess heat. You're not having a fever or anything, are you? Just making sure. Sometimes I see that. Okay, good. Yeah, I would just say end of December, things are going to be doing a little bit better, but I go and learn about Saturn square your sun, especially with breathing issues because you're a Gemini and you have the Gemini degree at 15. Hopefully that's helpful. And Danielle, I saw your payment. I can send that. I can add you on, but send me your information, please. You're going to be at the end, okay? Okay, so let's see who else I've got here. Okay, so we're going to take Nancy, and then we will take Danielle S. And then we'll have Queen of Wands. So let's see, Nancy. Nancy. Okay, if you guys didn't pay, if you're trying to pay after we closed it, we cannot take another reading. What's up, Nancy? We already called last call. All right, so Nancy, love reading, 9583. Well, my dear, I'm super curious about what's transits we just had recently. So I'm looking back at this eclipse that you had in October. So we had an eclipse, a solar eclipse, mid-October in your 7th house, Nancy. So that was setting the stage for new relationship stuff. Obviously, Mercury rules your 7th house. But just after that eclipse, we had a Mercury conjunction. So has anybody popped up since then? Because that is planting a seed. And then after that, Venus came into conjunction with that degree. Around, well, it will be around the end of November. So when it reactivates here over the next week, that can be for chance opportunities to connect with people. Granted, it's going to conjunct the South Node, and it's going to in conjunct Neptune. So there can be a sense of somebody come in that you don't quite, like somebody's sussing you out, but you're kind of like unaware. Then we're going to see Mercury trine Jupiter, and that's a really good connection time period as well. So that's going to be around the 6th and the 7th. Throughout the Mercury retrograde, you're going to see Mercury and Jupiter trine 3 times in December going into January. So my advice is pay attention to those dates. I talk about them on my horoscopes. The first one's going to be right around the 8th. I think there's another one around the 18th of December, and then you're going to see one in January. But you are obviously ruled by Jupiter, traditionally, and partners are ruled by Mercury. So I'm looking at early December where Mercury's trining Jupiter, and Jupiter's right on Juno. So that's about relationship, partnership, and harmony. And you've got Juno on your descendant. So is there somebody around already? Just the same gym admirers. Okay. So for me, it's like looking like whatever's going on here, there is definitely somebody, there is an opportunity for somebody to come through. Gym admirers make sense. You got Mars and Venus in your 6th. But where you actually meet people is going to be connected to your Mercury, and you've got Mercury that is retrograde. Pluto is coming in for a trine. Socializing, going out with other people, meeting people within group dynamics. That's where you're most likely to meet others. Another time period that also I can see is coming in when Pluto ingresses back into Aquarius. It's going to trine your Mercury. And you're going to see Mars and Venus come into trine with your Mercury as well. So another time that's really strong is going to be mid-February of 2024. And it looks like there's going to be like parties, gatherings, get-togethers with other people. And it's going to trine Mercury. And that's also bringing someone in. You're going to have Juno go in and out of your 7th house here for a bit, which means you're going to keep having people show up. Juno and Virgo, obviously, people through work, people who are also related to like health and wellness. But what I like about this is that it is going to be making trines to Jupiter. So it does make me feel like you're going to meet somebody. I mean, I feel like those 2 time periods are the best. An outer planet, trine to your 7th house lord generally will do it. So if you're just kind of feeling things out until the new year, definitely socializing. January, February, March, getting out and doing things and like being around other people just for the sake of getting out, not even intentionally trying to date. You'll meet somebody in a group dynamic. That guy keeps filming me while I work out in class. That's not creepy at all. Part of this is that you also had a retrograde in your 7th. So there could have been a sense of like people coming in and then changing their mind. But I think now that you're getting ready to start seeing planets that are going to trine, also for Virgos as well, like a Mercury retrograde, in Capricorn, you're going to hear it's about an opportunity to connect with something or someone that you really love, because it'll be 5th house to your sun. And it'll be in your 11th house. So it could be group fitness class, but it could be just groups in general, as far as I'm concerned. And then you're going to start seeing Saturn coming into an opposition with your sun. So I also feel like there is a sense of you, by the time you get to, like, let's say the new year with Saturn on your ascendant, which is definitely going to be about like your boundaries, your needs, kind of telling other people what's up. As it starts up opposing your sun, I don't really feel like there's a lot of like waiting for somebody like in a gym space to kind of approach you, like, because Saturn's going to basically want to put its arms out and create a little bit of distance from things in the 7th house. So maybe you're like sick and tired of feeling like you don't want to deal with passive people or people who are like not like making moves and like trying to reach out to you. It's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. And you're more direct about being like, okay, if you're interested, like, let's talk. Otherwise, like, leave me be. So definitely you've got a sweet spot between about now and February for things to kind of pop up. How are you doing with that retrograde that we had over the summer? Was that when you started noticing somebody at work? Not at work, at the gym? Because Venus went retrograde through here on your Mars. So it could have been like a little bit of like a cat and mouse game. And then finally you were like, okay, are we doing this or not? So the next window is definitely going to be the second half of December and then mid-February. But when do I see, people commit to relationships or significant relationships come in? Outer trines to your 7th house Lord. So, Pluto coming back into Aquarius is going to trine, but it looks like the theme is like, okay, we have to do something outside of a group, or we actually have to interact. It can't necessarily be, just kind of like staring at each other in a class. And your 7th house Lord is retrograde, Nancy, and it happens to be at a 0-degree cardinal point. So an ongoing theme for like the next 2 years is going to be a lot of being like, like show up, communicate, be direct, because I think Saturn and Neptune and the eclipses that'll come through Pisces next year is going to be a lot of being like, I don't want to be the one driving the ship. Like, if I don't know where things are going, I don't want to be the person who's driving it. But yeah, I would say mid-December and end of December and mid-February are going to be your 2 best times. Multiples are not unusual with Mercury in your 7th house, but the one that's going to stick is going to be the one that's going to communicate at least and get you outside of kind of like that group mindset, right? Colby left the gym. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Whoever left was probably the retrograde, and it was extending into about September in the shadow. But in terms of where you're going to go, well, Mercury trine Pluto is saying it's got to be somebody who's like, hey, do you want to do something outside of this, or do you want to go and do something with a group of people outside of the gym? It has to be brought outside of that space, right? But it makes so much sense, Virgo and the descendant, and then you've got all these planets in the 6th house. You connect with people in the gym space. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know who's who comes through. I've got Danielle. Here we go. Danielle is July 3rd, 1998. I usually don't ask about love, but I feel something conjuring in the air. I reconnected with a college friend back on 11/10, and we both feel like we're going to be seeing a lot more of each other. Any insights for the foreseeable future? Ooh. Oh boy. Well, your chart's quite interesting right now. So you're Libra rising. You've got Venus coming into contact with the South Node. You are a Cancer sun, and Mars rules your descendant. So what's interesting is that, yes, you're a Libra rising. Venus transits are really important for you. But you could almost read Scorpio, almost. In particular, I'm looking at a couple things. One is that Pluto is in the most southern part of your chart and it's squaring your ascendant, which means that there's some big changes going on emotionally at home and in your private life or your family. That is putting the pressure on you being able to be balanced and keeping the peace. And it's also squaring your descendant. So it's almost like there's a lot of things changing beneath the surface right now that's impacting you and your relationship with yourself and other people. Relationships in the past, right? That's very Venus South node, which is building right now. It also can be because you just recently had an eclipse here in April on your descendant. So it was supposed to kind of bring somebody in within 6 months, which would bring some pivotal kind of change either to the living situation or to like kind of bring up the past. I'm not surprised that there is a relationship that came from somebody who you went to college with because Mars is in Gemini and it's connected to your 9th house of higher studies and it's the ruler of your 7th. So the feeling that I'm getting with like Pluto square the descendant, Pluto square Saturn, planets in opposition to Mars. Do you guys live in other areas? Do you guys live in like 2 separate cities? Is there like distance between you guys? What's going on here? And Mars and Venus being in the 8th house and Venus in opposition to Pluto. So did one of the two of you just recently go through a pretty dramatic change in your life? Like job or financial change, relocation, ending of a relationship? Because anytime you got Venus in the 8th house, it basically means that, you know, relationships can start while you or the other person are going through like a really big sudden change or transformation. But this reads to me like you guys live apart. So I'm trying to figure out what the deal with that is. Oh, yeah, different cities. Okay, figured. So here's how I'm kind of seeing this, right? Commitment is, so he just went through a breakup. Okay, so this kind of checks all the boxes. The kind of the feeling that I'm getting here is, you know, when you have some pretty significant transits in your 7th house or some Mars transits, there's going to be talk revolving around, you know, a relationship evolving. Romantic partners from the past. You see, I've seen that a lot with Saturn in the 5th. Has anybody else experienced that? Saturn in the 5th house, Saturn conjunct the South Node, reconnecting with romantic partners from the past. That's pretty common. And it is sextiling Jupiter. So it seems like, you know, you might have a situation where this person is like a little bit more positive and optimistic about what the future holds in terms of a future together and maybe even like a commitment. The only challenge that I see here is just Pluto. You know, Pluto on your 4th house cusp square your moon. So you may be feeling the pressure to be like, okay, you know, for the relationship to evolve, have both of us dealt with the past, and equally, like, how would it work with the living situation? And you were born with Neptune in the 4th house square Saturn. So it almost seems like relationships coming in do have an impact on your home or your living situation. I think he's still hung up on her and I still can't see them broken up even though she's moved on already. I mean, to be honest with you, when you start to see Neptune come into a square with Mars again, and Saturn is starting to trine your sun because that's about other people that he could have been with. I'm kind of feeling like February, March seems like better timing. And then you're going to have planets go into your 7th house, so that can be better. I mean, obviously, synastry aside, we don't really know the synastry, but it does seem like people are really able to fully move on from the past, more so, because Pluto's no longer squaring your moon. Moon in Libra is about other people and their emotions, not just yours, and the moon represents the past for others. So as Pluto's coming out of the square and planets going in the 7th house, you might find spring of next year there's a little bit more likelihood of moving forward. But the living situation is a theme. I want to move back to LA. Yeah. The other thing that I would just take into consideration is Pluto's going to hit Neptune and it's going to square Saturn. And Saturn's at a 2, so there might be conversations revolving around, well, for the relationship to move forward, would somebody move? There will be a discussion about money stuff because you have Saturn in a sign that deals with money and resources. So there can be a sense of maybe going back and forth, getting to know each other a little bit, and then talking about down the road whether or not the relationship could evolve to a point where you guys could potentially live together. And you may see more healing in the relationship sense, you know, between the both of you in the spring. I think about the North Node Chiron conjunction too, and that can be about him moving on from the past. So yeah, I mean, you're going to see with Jupiter in your 7th house, partners are going to want to travel, and that's going to be there until, you know, May. And then traveling can actually be really great with Jupiter on your Venus next summer. You're going to see a Mars-Jupiter conjunction, which would be a really good time for you guys to do that. May and August, those are the 2 months that I like the best. But your chart's really prepped and primed for a huge change in your living situation and your relationships. Just know that as Pluto comes into your 4th house, it's now going to start squaring your Saturn. So it's going to be about whether or not you have the wherewithal financially to make a change in your living situation to better facilitate a relationship. And you'll be going through that all next year, right? But it'll be nice to have Jupiter on your Venus, your chart ruler. That's great for intimacy and shared resources. Saturn trying your sun, really great for socializing and also your career. Go and do some research about Pluto in conjunction to your 4th house, because that's about a change on the home front. And then also Pluto square Saturn is a bit of a doozy. It means that two things cannot coexist. So if for the relationship to evolve, there has to be a change eventually in the next year or so within the home base in order to better facilitate, you know, coming together. And I think Pluto in the 4th house square Saturn is also putting the pressure on him to let go of the past. Got it. He doesn't have a birth time, but I'm pretty sure he's Aries rising. So yeah, and you know, if he's an Aries rising, then eclipses, you know, in the 1st and the 7th are about healing himself. Especially you'll see that eclipse at the end of March next spring, and then people from the past. It's almost easier to be an Aries rising right now because you can focus on yourself while relationships come in, right? And if you're not going through a breakup with the South Node in the 7th, then what you're doing is your people from the past return. So that's kind of more or less what might be happening. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful for you. We've got Queen of Light Bulbs. I assume that was a play on Queen of Wands. So trying to assess the relationship, potential compatibility. We met when Mercury was conjunct my vertex and Sun conjunct my South Node. But he had a girlfriend. Years later, we reconnected. His progressed vertex is now conjunct my Mercury, and his progressed Venus and Mercury conjunct my South Node. Transit Pluto conjunct all that opposing my Sun. Okay, so could this be more of a passing fling? Let's pull this up. So we've got you, July 22nd, 1981, 8:10 a.m. in Montclair, and they are November 24th, 82. Let's pull this up. So it's their birthday today. 4:10 a.m. in Portland. You're welcome. For the real girl, you're a Libra rising, so Venus is your chart ruler, so you have to pay attention to Venus transits, but because you're 29 degrees, it's a critical degree. You have to really work through finding ways to find better balance, but you could listen to Scorpio rising horoscopes because it's a degree off. You may find there's more accuracy with Scorpio rising horoscopes in transit, but always listen for the Venus transits. That's very important. Okay, so let's look at these two. We've got Queen of Light Bulbs. We've got this other person, Libra rising, Sun in Sag, Moon in Pisces. Holy cow, look at that Sag stellium. Okay, so let's talk synastry. We're just gonna look at the synastry. We're not looking necessarily at the progress stuff right now, but A couple things that really pique my interest. Obviously, they've got a stellium of planets that ranges from the last degrees of Scorpio all the way through the later degrees of Sag. So that's usually around their second going into their third house, and that falls in your fourth house, right? So this is like the past. So all of that kind of landing in the fourth house means it can be about people coming back to you. It can be about a strong emotional connection, a strong psychic connection, and like somebody like this coming into your life is going to have a huge impact on your home or your emotions. So just, take note of that. I like the Jupiter on the IC, and I like Jupiter conjunct Uranus because it can talk about returning at some point down the line to one another. Let's see. Let's go and look at your question again so I can read these details again. All right. So when you met, okay, he had a girlfriend, reconnected, progressed vertex is now conjunct your Mercury, and his progressed Venus and Mercury conjunct your South Node. So it's about working out stuff from the past, especially with the progressed conjunctions. The thing is, when you're asking about whether or not this is like a fling or not, when you look at this person's astrology, they have Venus in Sag, which is already something that it does need some space, but they've got Venus conjunct Uranus, and it's technically in the second house, but it belongs to the whole sign third, which means there can be a sense of having multiples or having freedom, or they meet one person and then they go into another person. They just had an eclipse in their descendant. They're in their Pluto square Pluto and their Pluto square Saturn. And when you look at the ruler of their seventh house, it's exalted Mars in Capricorn. And you're seeing Jupiter, which is trining it right now. Okay? So eclipses brings in destined relationship. Jupiter transit to Mars, communication, talking to people from the past, right? Whole sign fourth. And Saturn right now is going to come back into a square with Uranus and also Venus. And Saturn's getting ready to hit the moon. So that can be about an important kind of turning point in regards to a romantic relationship with somebody and kind of discussing, the future and what the future holds. I always get a little iffy about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. I've seen a lot of these clients born in like 81, 82, 83, particularly 82, because these are generational planets. So, when Saturn and Pluto were coming together at the beginning of the 80s, we were seeing culturally divorce was becoming more prevalent, right? So coming out of the 70s, the disco era, everybody's done doing their drugs and now relationships aren't working. We started seeing a lot more divorce, and 29 degrees of Libra deals with divorce. So karmically speaking, we've got an exalted Saturn, which is good, 29 degrees, which is critical, conjunction to Pluto, which is transformative. This is like basically a generation of people, but really in this window, who are working through a lot of power struggles and issues in regards to balance and power struggles in relationships. So that being on the ascendant, there is both a sense of wanting to control and being too fixated about what they have and do not have in terms of relationships. And then Saturn can also be kind of limiting. So really, there's a lot of working through the relationships with themselves before they're ready to be in other relationships. The relationship karma is fine. I think Mars being in its placement is good. But anybody who's got Venus conjunct Uranus, they have breaks and patterns in relationship. It can be hot and cold. Mercury conjunct Venus also can definitely bring a sense of like needing a lot of stimulation and communication and talking with people. You're going to be much more likely to see something that's going to stick for somebody like this after we get into like the eclipses, next year. There's going to be an eclipse on the descendant conjunct Chiron. So working through some relationship wounding. And I would say when Saturn's out of the square with their Venus, they're going to be more capable of like committing. Progressions are great, but for me, I like to look at the Synastry, and then I like to look at the Davidson personally. Sometimes when you see transits on the progressed South Node, it just means that it's just reinforcing the fact that there is a reconnection and kind of, coming back together. Now, when we throw your planets on top of his chart, Juno sits on the ascendant. That's nice for commitment. We have got a vertex Juno conjunction, and it's also close to the south node. We've got a Mars north node. So generally, you know, all this Cancer may for some people be challenging, but sitting on his north node, it's helping him tap into soul growth, right? It's in his ninth, whole sign 10th. So it can be about status changes, working together, you know, being in relationship with one another. I kind of feel inclined to tell you, you have like the upper hand in this situation. You know, when somebody has the sun conjunct somebody's midheaven, there's a tendency to idealize them or put them on a pedestal. Venus square Neptune too, but there's always like this thing when, I mean, you know, if anybody else has experienced this, if you have somebody you've had a relationship with whose sun is, I mean, it needs to be close. It needs to be within a degree. So in this case, 29 degrees of Cancer sits on their midheaven. It's like that person, yeah, you're just always striving to want to be like them or connect with them. And so you can idealize them a little bit. And you never really let them go because you kind of hold them in high regard. So you might be someone that's hard for him to forget. And Mars on the North Node, you know, in Cancer still is kind of pushing him along in terms of, you know, really developing his purpose. Well, what is the North Node in Cancer? Home, family, living situation, roots. And it's at a 4. So we have yet another situation to me that seems like there could be something involving a long distance relationship, traveling, learning, moving. But 9th house is also ceremonies and spiritual connection. I think what's challenging right now is that you've got transit Pluto that is in opposition, you know, to your sun. And it's on the south node. So relationship stuff's going to kind of peak a little bit more for you in the spring. When you see like Jupiter and Uranus come into conjunction on your midheaven, you might suddenly find yourself in a relationship or having a status change or a job change. Have you had him, like, I don't know how much you guys have interacted, but has this person like come to visit you in your home yet? I would imagine when they come to stay, they just like make themselves very comfortable. You know, people who have a stellium like this in the 4th house are very quick to like want to move in and want to play house. And with their Jupiter conjunct Uranus, it'll like don't totally shake up your emotions or your home or your living situation. Let me know. I'm curious to hear. But yeah, I think the other thing I would be mindful of is the Chiron conjunction. Like there is a sense of needing to balance your stuff and also your home and your private life stuff and not getting entirely too consumed, because it can have an impact on your ability to feel like you can be like really focusing on your professional stuff. I use Astro Gold for Mac. That's what I use. Okay. Well, let me put it this way. You know, Jupiter expands, right? So with Jupiter being in your 4th house conjunct Uranus, I mean, it come to a situation where it'd be like, why don't you come here? You know, Jupiter will expand your home base. So he'll make something bigger. And I love the Jupiter square Venus. I didn't quite catch that until just now, but it's more strong in your chart because it's on the angles, you know. I've seen a lot of people who have North Node connections, vertex squares, right? So he's got vertex conjunct your midheaven, and it's squaring stuff. That's a common theme in committed relationships or long-term relationships. Vertex conjunctions, nodal squares as well. He's got Jupiter and Saturn square. Yeah, so where does that happen for you? So the node square, the 2nd house, so that's about commitment and possession in the relationship. And then your Jupiter, Saturn squares in the 12th. So that's interesting. So to me, it seems as if like you're coming in and you have some kind, I mean, you bring some kind of gift in terms of relationship knowledge, commitment. I still feel like you have the upper hand in this situation. You know, I just moved and still healing a few injuries, taking longer to put together. Yeah. He's got to dial that in his place. For sure. Are you kidding me? This Libra rising, look at that second house stellium. That's the type of person where you walk in the door and the house smells good and they're offering you all kinds of fancy foods and snacks and they keep you real comfortable. This one likes to entertain. They got nice stuff. Watch what happens in the spring. This is worth feeling it out until about then. When planets come into conjunction with the moon, like when Mars and all that stuff is coming through here, well, that's not going to be for a little bit. But when it does, when Mars is coming into conjunction with the moon and there's a retrograde in the 7th, you know, there can be a sense of there being more talk about like how you guys are both feeling and whether or not you're heading in the direction that you want to for relationships. All Sagittarius are going to have the issue of the back and forth between two places next year. So it may be entertaining to see you get your space set up, but you're still spending a lot of time there. They're going to be a creature of habit, you know, so just keep that in mind. But for me, I think it's the eclipses. I think the eclipses that he's having, squaring all of his stuff, is bringing a new person in. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Excuse me. Let's see, who else do we have here? Susanna. All right, so Susanna, September 1277, 6:45 a.m. in Knoxville. I have Chiron at 5 of Taurus. This degree is super active lately. Any advice or insights on transits hitting that coming up? I do. I have some insight on that for you. All right, so let's find your Chiron. There it is. Oh, and the moon's there right now. How are you feeling at this moment? Oh, and husband and I run that company together. Okay, here we go. Navigating lots of changes, drastic career change from running my family construction company to working with healing modalities, possibly done with my marriage and all of this as well. Oh boy. Well, so Saturn's coming up on your descendant. So just kind of food for thought. As Saturn's coming into that conjunction next year, that's going to be more about whether or not you're making it work or not. In my opinion, the ends of marriages actually happen in the 6th house because this is also a house that we see divorce. And Pluto's going into Aquarius, so that's bringing about abrupt changes to work and relationships for a lot of Virgo risings. But more on what you're asking me about, 5 degrees of Taurus. So there has been some talk that this is a degree that Jupiter, or I guess technically Taurus does not have as much strength. So if you've got a planet that's sitting at that degree, it has delays, right? Part of it is because it is 5 degrees deals with Leo. And obviously that is a sign that squares. Also, you know, I don't know how much stock I put in that. I think the challenge with this degree is that we had an eclipse there in October, and then we had Jupiter that is retrograding currently back to that degree. So essentially, even though we had an eclipse in October, Jupiter is going to retrograde and it's going to be in that degree for about a month before it goes direct right at the end of December. So what does Jupiter do? It gives us awareness, faith, clarity. It can make things bigger. Jupiter rules relationships and it also rules home. So it tells me that Jupiter is magnifying some sense of awareness about where you're having wounding about relationships and your home. And it's in the 9th house right now. So it's about law, legality, So maybe you're kind of going like, if I do separate, would I need a legal separation? How would that impact not just the relationship, but also how I'm working or where I'm working in the business? And then 2, technically when Jupiter retrogrades back to 5 degrees, it's going to be in your 8th house. So it's going to be talking about going through some need to make a big change to your resources or your finances, your joint resources, right? The good thing is that even though it's magnifying the Chiron wound of what you need to heal, it's trining your Mercury in the 12th. So it tells me that you're using astrology and your psychic insight and you're tapping in and you're listening to things and you're meditating on stuff. And like that's helping you stay informed, right? Mercury, and make the best decisions for what's best for you and your home and your family, the moon. My husband, and doesn't the April solar eclipse hit that too? No, the April solar eclipse in spring of 2024 is going to be at 19 degrees of Aries. But you're going to start seeing eclipses that are coming up on your south node. And so the astrology right now, especially for like Virgo risings with eclipses in the 8th house, is dealing with taxes, insurance, joint resources, inheritance. Aries, is a sign that you have to fight for something or fight what's owed to you. So you're going through transits where it's basically saying through your reverse nodal return, if you do separate through a marriage, you're going to, have to receive something that's going to be your cut, or it might be your piece of the pie. Maybe it's going to be something involving money that you've accumulated together with your partner. You might see a lot of insurance changes that happen. Like that kind of stuff. But yeah, once Jupiter gets off Chiron, come about the second half of January, you're good. I think it's just a lot of you looking at expenses and being like, how would potentially changes in my relationship, because Jupiter rules 7th, impact your expenses, and if you were to separate the financial, legal kind of implications of some of that stuff. Keep in mind, Jupiter's also going to trine your ascendant, so it's going to help you have more freedom and be more optimistic. It's going to trine your sun, which means it's going to help you realize that it is possible that you may feel, because the sun rules the 12th house, that you're not necessarily getting what you're needing, or maybe you're finding yourself daydreaming about a relationship that, the qualities that you're hoping to kind of find in a partner again. A lot of it depends on their astrology. Believe it or not, the karma of divorce is the 4th house, according to Vedic standard. So when I look at your 4th house, Sagittarius, Neptune is there. So Saturn's going to come into a square with Neptune. I think really the discussion in this next year is going to be more about if there is changes in your relationship, how that's impacting you emotionally and the family. But business-wise, starting a new business, it depends on when you want to launch something. I would say when Saturn is coming into a trine with Jupiter, right around the turn of the new year, that's good. I would really aim for like one of the Jupiter-Mercury transits. So we're going to see the 8th, the 18th, and then again in January, that's a better day. Those are better days for business launches, especially if you're working in healing or metaphysics with the North Node in your 8th house. But yeah, next year's Saturn in opposition to the sun. So that means that either you're dealing with a relationship situation where there's some space, or you're seeing clients maybe at a distance. So are you doing like distant healing work? Has that been coming up for you? Mercury rules your 10th. Mercury's in the 12th. Jupiter's going to trine it. Yeah, intuitive healing, psychic healing. I mean, even long distance stuff. I mean, you can do stuff, kind of separate, because you have so many planets between your 12th and your 1st house that you may do some of your best work not always physically being around someone. Okay, Reiki, I would really look into distant healing work, because Saturn will oppose your sun, so you can work with people at a distance. Saturn is also about, in Pisces, it's about photographs, pictures. So being able to do distant healing on particular pictures, or maybe you're doing some gridding or something. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. Oh, thank you. Thank you. This is what happens when Jupiter opposes my Mars. I lose my voice. I think the other thing that I would consider is ways that you can, open up your services through some kind of collaboration with other people. So as transits go through your 7th house, yeah, you can have relationships with clients, right? But this might be some kind of collaboration you're doing with other people to like bring more recognition to your brand. And then obviously, you know, you're Virgo rising. So Jupiter will go into your 10th house next year, but really it kind of suggests that you're gonna balance 2 jobs, because duality is Gemini. There's 2 things. So Jupiter's gonna go into your 10th house right around the summer, and it's going to oppose and square. So it almost seems like you're gonna start this thing up and you're gonna see how it goes into about mid-2024, trying to assess whether or not it's giving you the wherewithal to kind of like start to break away. Oh, you're doing gridding. Wonderful. Well, yeah, look at all that Virgo in your chart. But also Mercury conjunct the moon means that you really tap in and you're like asking yourself, like, what does this person need? Or maybe you get insight before you do that work. Like you'll meditate or something, or you'll do some divination. And you can make lots of recommendations and remedies for people also. Like with what crystals to use, what stones, what shapes and other designs and other things. Yeah, I think it's a good move. You know, regardless, next year you're going to do some kind of work with people at a distance, and you're also going to feel a little bit of a distance in a relationship. But I would advise you, unless you see a really hard aspect between like Neptune and Uranus, I don't really necessarily see a separation right now. There can be some stuff that can come up in April when Mars conjuncts Neptune and Saturn. And I would say when Mars and Jupiter square. So if you feel good about where you're at by about August of next year, you may start stepping back from the work that you were doing with a partner. Let's see, Neptune. That's kind of hard with Sun square Neptune, and also Saturn with your Moon Mercury square Neptune. Do you feel like the work that you do with a partner, do you feel like you're the one taking the brunt of the or doing the brunt of the work? Like what's going on there? Or you're overlooking things and it's becoming like exhausting working with a partner? Not the best time to be working with a partner right now, with Saturn in opposition to Mercury. And Saturn's going to square Neptune. So you're going to feel like something's missing, right? So really a lot of it depends on your synastry, but I would say like as Saturn opposes your sun all next year, you're going to be reflecting on whether you're getting what you need. And, you know, Saturn's going to be in the 7th house, so it can be about somebody else's moods, emotions, behaviors, you know, how they're showing up and whether or not they're doing what they need to do. Yeah. Well, part of the life of Virgo rising is you bring in a lot of people who need help, right? Pisces on the descendant. They might feel lost, right? Hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight, but you definitely look like, yeah, next year is going to be like this seesaw between being like, I'm doing my thing, I'm going back and forth, before August seems like it might be like the breakaway point. Hopefully that's helpful for you. We've got Sasha. Let's see. And then Kaye. If you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. I'm just still going back over this. Okay, so Danielle, you got a reading last week. You had the reading and you were asking about getting another reading. So you did not pay for a reading today, just to confirm. Because I only see the one from last week. I don't know if you have a different last name, but I'm not seeing anybody with your last name on here. Or if you want to let me know what your question was last week. I just want to make sure that the reading that you paid for you got, because I'm a little confused with what you're asking me. Yeah, I see your payment. So you did or you didn't get a reading last week? Did we hold it for you? Yeah, I can see your payment. I just want to make sure that we postponed it to this week. And if we did, then I will do your reading. Just send me your information. All right, so let's see. So we've got Sasha. Okay, cool, thanks. All right, so Sasha says, I feel paralyzed. I don't know which way my love or home life is heading this year. I'm crushing on my online tutor, but he lives in South America. Should I keep hope despite the distance? All right, so let's take a look. Let's see what you got going on. February 18th, 1997, 8:05 a.m. And that was in Olympia. All right, so essentially, I feel paralyzed. I don't know which way home or love life is heading. So home, well, okay, so this is a good example of astrology at work here. So you got Neptune on the ascendant. Okay, so remember how I said about how planets can be on an angle and they influence other houses? Neptune creates fogginess, confusion, misunderstandings, exhaustion, not seeing things so clearly. And Neptune is squaring the 10th house, which is about career, and it's starting to square the 4th house, which is about home, and it's opposing the 7th house of partners. So she has interest in another person, but she doesn't know if it's going to work because of the distance, opposition. She's confused about the direction of home life, square to the 4th house, home. So it's kind of like across the board. So here's the one thing I'm going to tell you. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see Mercury, the Sun, and Mars all come into Sagittarius, and it's going to be at the top part of your chart. So this is going to be more about where's the direction of your professional life, your career, your outer reputation, or your goals heading, right? Because you can get a lot of work done with planets in the 10th house because you're focusing on long-term goals. And as these planets come into the 10th house, they're squaring Neptune and pushing you out of your comfort zone, making you aware of where you're like not seeing things clearly, or you're being too idealistic or too hopeful. That could potentially be happening. And Saturn's finally leaving your sun, so that also is going to kind of lighten things up in terms of your schedule, your career, life, your health issues. And Saturn on the sun in the 12th house has you feeling kind of like alone, kind of isolated a little bit. It is going to take something rather significant to your 7th house cusp or Mercury for a relationship to evolve. Hey, you got your 7th house relationship lord conjunct Venus in the 12th. So foreigners, people who you have crushes on, people who you like, and you're not really sure, or maybe there is some kind of like cultural or communication challenge, right? Because Saturn's there. When do I see either one of these things making more sense? Well, let's take a look. You're in your annual perfection year 27 in February. So that's going to be all about Gemini and Mercury, okay? So annual perfection is the technique that I use to kind of get an idea of where you're at for the year. When your birthday starts in February, you're going to be in a 4th house annual perfection year, which means you're going to turn 27. And the 4th house is all about home, living situation. It's about family. Ruled by Gemini, it means that there is a sense of going back and forth between two things, to which we look at Mercury. So there is a possibility that you're playing with the idea of being like, oh, could I live in a foreign place? Is it a thing? Could I move? Could I visit other places? Maybe. You're going to see in the next year that, you know, when your birthday starts in February, you're going to want to pay attention to Mercury retrogrades. So you're going to see one that's going to be in Aries, and then you're also going to see planets go into your 4th house with Jupiter. So actually, like, let's say late spring, early summer of next year, there's much more likelihood of having a change in your living situation, especially when Jupiter retrogrades. So I feel like maybe you'll travel to a place and you're trying to figure out where you want to land and you're feeling it out. And, you know, after you've gone there, and then Mars and Jupiter come into conjunction in August, and then Jupiter retrogrades, you're getting settled somewhere around the end of summer of next year. All of this Aquarius also in your, technically your 11th and your 12th house is going to receive trines. So this is about going somewhere where there's going to be community, where there's going to be friends, there's going to be other people that you can kind of mingle with and get to know and spend time with, which I think is really good for this chart because it's going to open things up for you socially quite a bit. That's such an interesting stellium to have in Aquarius, and then to have like a sun in Pisces. So there's like a lot of needing to connect with other people in a group setting. So wherever you're going to go, there's going to be community or people who are like-minded, or connecting with people in other places and maybe making friends and then traveling to go and meet them and visit them and kind of like suss that out. It's interesting because you have, you know, the south node on your ascendant, the north node on your descendant, and the events that take place this Sagittarius season as planets square are really quite pivotal. First, it looks like you're going to have Mercury square your nodes. So pay attention to like, you know, decision making going on around the 30th of November, especially with relationships or career stuff. Then you're going to have the sun come into the square with the nodes, and that's going to be about making changes to the direction of like your purpose and also your habits. You might have some career changes or some work schedule changes in December. And then Mars is going to square the nodes. And so that's all at that pivotal 29 degrees. So something's happening in December where you're like starting to figure out what your goals are, what you're doing professionally, or what direction you're going in. And that gets set up. And these planets in Sagittarius are going to push down on Neptune and also Saturn. So if you go and listen to my Pisces rising horoscopes for December, it's a challenging time. Great for work and productivity, but you're going to feel like you're in a constant time crunch, so that there's a lot of pressure for you to make a decision about either, you know, a work endeavor, or, you know, just feeling like there's much more responsibility for the next month. But as those planets start to kind of square the nodes, and then even next year, you're going to see Neptune on the south node, can be a time where you can have some really otherworldly experiences. Neptune on the ascendant in general, I feel like, is very mystical, and it can help people tap into things and have like really strong psychic, you know, perception. But in the sign of Pisces especially, and then 29 degrees. So you're going to probably get really into like meditation, hypnosis. You're going to start like being very visual, or having maybe experiences where you're seeing some things that are otherworldly. You know, Neptune can actually deal with ghosts. So with South Node and Neptune on your ascendant, you're feeling like you're having out-of-body experiences, or you're going to be really interested in like near-death experiences, or, you know, how to release things and kind of like connect with the ethers. So you're going to have that transit while you're having Pluto coming into a conjunction with a bunch of stuff. So you're about to have some stuff in terms of your third eye just like blown wide open in the next year or two. So grounding techniques, I think, are going to be really important for you, so you're not feeling like you're kind of getting lost throughout that transit. And 29 degrees are some of the most karmic degrees in astrology. So with Saturn on the south node in your first house, you're kind of working through some karma revolving around focusing on yourself, isolating yourself, keeping to yourself, and it's trying to bring in more of that north node in the seventh house of relationships and partnerships. And I think the feeling of feeling like, well, in my hometown or where I live, I feel very isolated or kind of lonely, but you'll find that you'll develop lots of friends and connections, and potentially even relationships with people in other places, and it will actually bring you to other places, because some of these other places will feel more like home. You would be a really great candidate for a client who would really benefit from a consultation with like a relocation astrologer, because you have so much going on in your 12th house that you could relocate this chart to another city or another country that could move some of that stuff into the 10th house or into the first house. And like, you might find that you're just socially, and in terms of your goals and your relationships, your career, you're moving all of that stuff out of where it typically is in Washington, and you might be able to kind of readjust the ascendant and have a little bit of like an easier time. So generally when I see charts like this, people end up kind of traveling a lot, or they relocate. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. We've got Kaye, and then I'll take Danielle. Kaye. So it looks like we got Kaye here, August 19th, 94 at 9:24 p.m. in Illinois. Let's see. Any insight or guidance for my Saturn return? I'm getting a lot of you guys now. I've had a couple of you guys this week. All right, so you have Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is in your 12th house. What does Saturn represent? Well, Saturn is connected to your 10th house of career, reputation, and professional life. You also have a mutual reception between Saturn and Neptune, because you got Neptune in a Saturn sign and Saturn in a Neptune sign. So this tells me something about the work that you're doing behind the scenes, what you're meditating on, reflecting on, continuing education, foreign travel, what you're learning, what you believe in. Private sector, hospitals, higher education, somehow that's going to factor into your career growth. You do have what I would consider you have an aspected Saturn, okay? Not only is it aspected, meaning it makes, trines and sextiles to things. So Saturn trine Jupiter is great, because through resistance and patience and reflection and faith, you'll see growth and change in relationships. So that's good. You also see Saturn trine Mars, which is your chart ruler, which means it's helping you learn how to kind of tame themes revolving around expression, communication, sharing your feelings, but also maybe changes revolving around your home and movement. So you've got a water trine built into your chart. So having your Saturn return is going to help you tap into your natal Jupiter and Mars placement. But you also have Saturn in opposition to your Sun, Mercury, and Chiron. Pretty strongly, more so Mercury, Chiron. It's too wide of an orb for your Sun, but Saturn in opposition to Mercury means that there can be issues revolving around communication, self-expression, feeling confident in sharing your ideas, speaking out and communicating. And then you got Saturn in opposition to Chiron. So issues with authority figures and probably people at work. There can be some issues with coworkers and feeling like you're left hanging the bag, dealing with responsibility, or, working harder behind the scenes, picking up the slack for other people. Having the Sun conjunct Mercury in your 6th house in itself, I think, is enough for you to be like, I feel like I'm constantly doing things for other people. So when Saturn comes in to your Saturn return, it might be this realization of like the emotional, spiritual, or psychological impact that has of, not working too much and not getting adequate rest. Sometimes a lot of times astrology is literal. If you think of the 12th house is where we go to rest. So it can be hospitals, prisons, jails, psychiatric wards, but it's also temples, spiritual centers, meditation rooms, right? So I look at this and I'm like, okay, not all work needs to be the physical daily grind where you have your Sun, Mercury, Chiron. Some of these placements might indicate that you're not only dealing with issues with coworkers, but there can be patterns and habit issues, health-related matters. So your Saturn return with Saturn in the 12th house saying time to get out of the 6th house of the daily routine, need to get into the 12th house where you're resting more, maybe seeing a specialist if you have an ailment. It might have you focusing on your goals and meditating on what you're hoping to achieve, and like a lot about visualizing the path forward rather than taking physical action, and what you learn from that period of separation. Saturn opposed Chiron, is very health related. Okay. I also feel like because Mercury rules your third house, it might be where you're feeling like there's some wounds that come up in terms of your relationship with other people, and that it's somehow connected to communication issues. And so you might kind of find yourself constantly being like, I should have said something. And then you get frustrated because you feel like you don't say something or you don't speak out. And then finally, your Saturn is intercepted. So when you work with Placidus housing system, you're going to see sometimes houses are going to swallow up signs. So you see how the 12th house starts with Aquarius and the first house starts with Aries. So Pisces gets swallowed up. That means Virgo gets swallowed up. So people get confused with this. Essentially, to make it very simple, think of interceptions as blind spots, right? If you're backing out of a garage and you can't see out of your back window, you're going to hit the side of your garage. You're going to hit a wall, or you're going to hit a trash can, hopefully not a person. But basically, this is how these work. If it's intercepted, you can't see very clearly. So the signs represent how the energy is expressed, right? Psychic blockages, or not seeing things clearly, or maybe going through the motions, but not having the spiritual or the, philosophical, even the educational, kind of clarity. And it means that there can be things that are kind of hiding and lurking in your subconscious that are impacting your health, and you don't see them coming. This can also represent for you because, Pisces in the 12th house can also deal with like past life karma, self-undoing. And then the 6th house can deal with health, habits, patterns, and routine. Like one affects the other, basically. You're going to see that go through. Thankfully, you've got, the signs in the houses that they're traditionally in with the whole sign method. So just be mindful that, Virgo and Pisces, as with all the duality of the 12 signs, they're complementary. They talk about the same thing. And I feel like information, faith, habits, these are all topics of Virgo and Pisces, and this is what you're going to be working through. Really lean on the trines to help you through the Saturn return. So like with Saturn trine Mars, it's going to be about how maybe you're taking time to take action, to sit down and like write your goals and like really stay connected to your emotions, and like where you're feeling like maybe frustration's coming up for you and you have to sit and reflect on it and try to figure out, how you can work through that and communicate better without getting super like hyper emotional with Mars in your third house in Cancer. And then Saturn trine Jupiter means like counselors, therapists, partners, astrologers, people who can give you kind of like insight in terms of, how to better navigate these energies. The support of the 7th house can really kind of help you move forward. And your Saturn return basically is going to be all next year. So what'll be nice is at least Saturn is going to start sextiling planets in your 10th house. So I feel like you could do a lot of work behind the scenes and be helping people who really need help. I mean, I think of Saturn and Pisces right now as, people who are having mental health issues, people who are homeless, people who need more, support, within their communities. But it also can be a turning point for your faith or your belief systems as well. And it can open the door to better communication and relating better to other people. Saturn in the 12th, it doesn't matter what sign it's in, especially if it's in Pisces. Developing a really solid meditation routine, I think, is going to be a game changer for you. And I really recommend doing it. Making that time. And the 12th house is also sleep and the bedroom. So it might mean that you're doing something revolving around your nighttime routine and making changes there. And maybe you're taking time to kind of pause and reflect or meditate or do some spiritual work or do some prayer in the evenings to help you kind of move through some of these energies. Look into Saturn mudras with your hands also as you're doing meditation. That can be helpful. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I definitely, I'm curious to see what happens. I've had so many people with Saturn and Pisces, so it's been really interesting to talk to all of you guys, especially with that opposition to Chiron. I think that's such a huge factor in your Saturn return, is learning to let go of maybe what isn't healthy, right? So I've got Danielle. What was that? 8, 10. All right, so I got you here, Danielle. Okay, so let's take a look and see what your question was. Okay, so your partner's coming home next week after Thanksgiving. He went back to his family's in New York and you stayed in California at the house we moved into in the beginning of October. Yep, I remember. So you guys were talking about taking time apart. You're welcome, Kaylee. So let's see what you got going on here. We've been together for almost 3 years, pretty much give you the backstory. Okay, so they're coming back. Let's see. Well, I mean, so there's some, I mean, obviously as a Cancer, you know, I think about mid-December and the Mercury retrograde in your 7th house to your sun. So it's going to be in your 5th house of romantic partners, but it's 7th house to your sun. So it's giving you the opportunity to kind of work some of this stuff out. It's a little frustrating when you have like Sun, Mercury, Mars in opposition to your sun. So expect that December is going to be this partner of yours being like, I need this, I need that. And having to be mindful of what your goals are, 11th house versus your partner's goals, right? 5th house. I feel like also this is going to be about trying to find ways to better communicate because this is going to be forming several trines to Jupiter. So it's about trying to get on the same page about, okay, but where is the future going, right? What are we doing? Because next year Jupiter and Uranus are going to meet in the spring. So that's supposed to be about a big status change for you in April. Is there an ending coming? No, I don't think so. When I look at these transits, here in mid-February, that's like the turning point. I think you were asking me about that too, right? You were like, why do things get weird then? Well, because all these planets are putting the pressure on Uranus. Should there be? I think this is going to be about getting on the same page about your guys' intentions in terms of what the purpose of the relationship is going to be personally and how to be able to meet in the middle and make things better. You can do that and have the best opportunity for communication in mid-December. If you can do this in mid-December, you can have the breakthrough that you're looking for in the spring. If you guys can't, then you're going to find that you're going to be in the same situation come February or March that you are in now, where then it's pushing you to make a change in the living situation. Excuse me, guys. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. But this is where the turning point is, right here. Mid-March 2024. Venus, Sun, Mars, all coming into a square with Pluto and squaring the midheaven. So you guys have to have a plan in terms of moving forward and make sure that you've been implementing about 3 months from December till March of learning to work together to make amends. Really, I'd have to look at the synastry, not even the synastry, the midpoint. It's a different reading, but looking at their transits with your transits and creating the midpoint chart. But a lot of Libras right now are having to learn to like let go and make some sacrifices, especially in the living situation, to better relationships. So I think about like Pluto coming in, squaring all of this stuff and being able to really realize what's going to work best for the home living situation and the relationship in December. Saturn's off the moon. You guys are both coming into your Saturn return. That's about timing. And then Libras are also going to be experiencing in that eclipse in the spring, 7th house to the sun with Chiron. That eclipse is going to be right in opposition to Venus. What I can see is that, you know, he was born with Chiron, Sun, Mercury, Venus, all in Libra, and the South Node swinging through there. So there is a sense of having to clear out old identities and really learning how to merge and like be a part of a relationship. All your planets in Cancer square his nodes, so you force him to do that. And Libras don't always respond very well to that much Cancer because they can almost feel as if like it's 10th house to their sun. So they feel like it's a Saturnian energy, like that you have control, or maybe they can feel like you can be like a little like bossy. Mid-March, will that be bad? Please don't fly. I decided to move home to New York. If somebody's going to move back home, okay, that wouldn't come until about January through March. And because he's got Mercury combust in his chart, Mercury's retrograde and in conjunction to his sun, that doesn't necessarily mean they're dishonest, okay? But like lots of miscommunication and misunderstandings because Mercury's kind of, you know, conjunct the sun. It's like they don't know what they want. They go back and forth a lot and they change their mind a lot. And they're having to let go of feeling like they're, you know, the victim, or they have to let go of this idea that they have to be alone. I mean, obviously, you know, you guys have a very, very similar astrology. You're born the same year, but you guys got a lot of placements that are similar. And I think about you being a Leo rising, Jupiter and Uranus are going to come into your 10th house and they're going to oppose all this stuff and start squaring, which means like the relationship either has to go the distance, really starting in the spring, or you guys are both going to realize like it's not working. And if you're having issues with him being dishonest, then the key here is that I think the South Node on his Mercury and his Sun in this next year is going to show him where, you know, he's doing it to himself, and the South Node is hitting his Venus. So he has to be willing to kind of put his issues aside and be more mindful of what's going on in a relationship. But, you know, you guys have a ton of squares. He squares all your stuff too, which means it comes into the 3rd house where it's really trying for communication, and you're going through South Node eclipses there. So you're basically looking at things being like, I don't want to keep having the same conversations and going round and round. He's been in California living with me, but in his own place for about 3 years. We go back and forth on holidays. Yeah. For you, you know, I think the big thing to really focus on is that a decision seems to be made about what you are embracing in terms of the future with relationships in the spring. And when you embrace that, those planets are going to oppose all this Scorpio, which means there has to be a change in a living situation. So Jupiter represents children, romance, creativity. Uranus represents relationships and commitment. So in April of 24, those two planets come together in your 10th house where you're like, I want to get married, or I want to settle down, or I want to live with my partner, or I want to, you know, like there is a sense of making some of those decisions. And Libras have good relationship karma in this next year where they can do that as long as they're working through some of these issues with partners and listening to partners when partners are saying, hey, you're doing this thing, I don't like this is hurting me, or vice versa. It can work both ways. And as far as I'm concerned, like, you know, your astrology as well, you have some difficult astrology for relationships. Sun in opposition to Neptune, Sun in opposition to Uranus, Venus in opposition to Uranus. It means that you need to get on the same page about what both of you guys are looking for in terms of relationships in the long term. And there needs to be a clear separation between just kind of having a situationship versus being in a relationship. Because obviously there's a lot of you being focused on what the goals are as a partnership, but the oppositions in your 6th means that you're dealing with a lot of strife and like limitations and delays and challenges with partners. So it really depends on his chart, but I will say that if there's gambling issues, a lot of that stems from the planets that are in a square to his sun. And, you know, you have a lot of planets in the 11th house. So bringing in people who like to play games, whether that's with money or, you know, in dating, it kind of makes sense with your 11th house. Addictions, patterns, and habits come up in your chart in terms of people who you could be in relationships with. So I would watch for that. But as far as I'm concerned, March is the turning point, and then April, and then May is the turning point. So March and May are the 2 months that you want to be mindful of, because when planets start opposing and squaring again, and you come into your Saturn return and you realize that there's challenges in this relationship with your Saturn in the 8th house, and you're like, I'm with somebody who isn't financially responsible, or like I'm not feeling supported, I'm not getting what I need. That's when you're going to realize, like, okay, that's probably not gonna work. And you'll see more serious commitment in relationships happening in spring, basically. It's kind of hard to say without looking at his chart. So, I'd have to really look at that. I'm not going to base it just off of his birthday. But you have so many oppositions in your chart. Mars in opposition to Saturn. And you have Mars in the 2nd house, where you're like, look, I'm healing issues that I have with money, security, and resources. I don't need a partner who's hiding things and keeping things from me in terms of what they're doing with money and like what's going on, that it really wants you to kind of work it out before you move more seriously forward in a relationship with someone, right? So all these oppositions are trying to kind of help you make sense of like which way it's going to break. I'm not saying it's going to be, it's not necessarily going to be shitty. It's just Saturn is your traditional 7th house ruler. And because Saturn rules relationships and it's in the 8th, you will find as a part of your Saturn return that if you can't trust somebody physically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually, financially, no dice. And it's in general. You were born with that opposition. So the oppositions are just teaching you to have something at a distance and to kind of go back and forth. But in my mind, I've seen people who have these transits that are like, okay, I realize, when planets go through the 7th house, like they will for you in March, if it's not working, then you'll take space, and then it can be enough to bring that person back. Depends on his specific astrology. So I'm not going to speculate if we don't have his time and like we're not doing a synastry reading, but I would say that a relationship for you is going to stick when you have a better transit of Jupiter and, Uranus, or Saturn and Uranus. So I do see a breakthrough in a relationship next year if that person is really ready. But you're going to see, Jupiter, Uranus in opposition to Pluto. It's like it's still saying because you want to move forward, you're pushing somebody else out of their comfort zone. And as long as Jupiter and Uranus for the next 2 years are in a square to your 7th house, there's still a lot of fluctuation in relationships. I guess that's how I would phrase it. Yeah, in and out, because it's squaring your 7th house. Okay, so the 10th house is your reputation, your status, and your career. This is their home base. So as long as for the next year and a half, these are squaring your 7th house, there's a lot of back and forth with the living situation. And you might get to a point where you're like, I don't want to do the back and forth anymore. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting. But the best time to discuss this is going to be in December when you have a Mercury retrograde. Sit down and be like, look, this is where I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is what is and isn't working. So you can set the stage to talk about it and find out if you guys can. And I would be really discussing, what the next 3 to 6 months your goals are, and try to get on the same page about what you guys can be accomplishing together. But yeah, basically. A lot of it depends on their astrology. So this is not a synastry reading. You paid for a reading for your chart. So I would need to sit down and look at both of the charts with the same time, which I do on Fridays. But looking at this, to me, as long as these two planets are squaring your 7th house, which will be the next 18 months, I'm not saying a relationship can't stick, but there is going to be a lot of back and forth. Because this is going to square your relationships, which means you're really focusing on changing your career and your identity, and it's going to oppose your 4th house, which means you're getting kind of restless with the home base. So from what I can see, a relationship can proceed forward very quickly with the right person if the right person is ready for what you're ready for. But any dishonesty, not being clear in a relationship, especially about finances, I really, really, really have to tell you, when your Saturn return begins, which is going to be in 2025, you have Saturn in Pisces retrograde at 24 in the 8th house, which means You're learning karmic lessons revolving around things that partners keep from you that's hidden about their money and what they're spending it on and whether or not they really have as much as they're telling you or they don't. And when this happens in the spring of 2025 and it opposes your Mars, there can be a sense of you getting agitated or frustrated, being like, well, what do you mean that, you don't have the money to live together, or you can't pay your half of the rent, or you don't have any savings, or, you're in a ton of debt. Like something like that most likely will happen. So knowing that that's the direction where things are going, I really recommend in this next year being very cautious about anything revolving around discussions of finances and security, and making sure that there's some honesty there, because that's important for you. Chiron and Mars in your second house means, you work really hard to mend or heal some of the financial challenges that you have, or maybe issues with self-esteem or money. And so you don't want to feel like you're having to pay or, compensate for somebody else's lack of responsibility. So you could prevent, I'm not going to say prevent, but you can be forewarned so you don't go and sign on a lease with somebody or decide to buy a house with somebody, or say, okay, I'll pay for stuff, you can pay me back, because part of your Saturn return might be where you're not getting your support from another person, But reconciliation, the best time for reconciliation is the month of December. So that Mercury retrograde is really helpful in your 5th house. I would say get their information and come back, because I can't speculate without looking at their info. If you have their time of birth and you get a Synastry reading, I can take a look at that and let you know. All right, well, I think that was everybody. I will save the charts of the people who came in this week. So if you guys need to follow up with me, or if you want to come back and watch this reading, you guys can watch it. You can leave the comments below. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. That way you guys are alerted as to when we have videos coming out on the channel. We've got a full moon in Gemini that's coming here. That video is out. You can't miss it. It's got me with a clown nose. I talk all about how all the mutable squares are creating lots of miscommunication and misunderstandings. We're feeling a little slow this week because we have some Saturn squares, so be mindful of that in the next couple days. And December horoscopes are out, so if you guys haven't checked those out, check those out. I talk all about the transit for the next month. We're doing a live 2024 New Year's Day presentation. We're going to talk all about the astrology of 2024. We have so much stuff happening next year. We're going to see more eclipses in Libra and Aries, a new eclipse that's going to be in Pisces. Jupiter's going into Gemini, right? We're going to see also Jupiter and Uranus come into conjunction before that happens. There's so many interesting aspects next year. Pluto going back into Aquarius. So if you guys want to be a part of the live taping, you guys can do that. I'm selling tickets for $5. It's just $5 donation. It'll probably be a couple hours long, and it'll be in the late morning, depending on your time zone, on January 1st. So head over to my website. You guys can make a $5 donation. You'll get a link sent to you for the live show. If you want to know all about the astrology of next year, you want to book a reading, or you want to see some of my astrology calendars, click the link below and go to beyondtheveiltarot.com. All my courses and everything are on sale right now too. So check out all those sales on my readings and all that stuff for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Otherwise, you guys can catch me back here on Sunday. And thanks for hanging out with me on Friday night. I'm stoked I got to see you guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see all of you very soon. Take care.